Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. I'm Caroline Broussard, Chairperson of the North Region SELPA Community Advisory Committee, or CAC. And we're so glad that you all can join us this evening for the second part of our two-part series on literacy. For the fourth year in a row, we are pleased to host a virtual roundtable discussion among our five unified school districts that make up our Special Education Local Plan Area, or SELPA for short. Those districts are Albany, Alameda, Berkeley, Emory, and Piedmont. I would like to extend our sincerest thanks from the CAC to all of our presenters this evening and to all of the district teams and partners that contributed to the presentations that we will hear this evening. I want to personally thank the members of the Community Advisory Committee for your work in bringing this literacy series to fruition for the last 4 years. If we have members of the public joining us for the first time, please check out the CAC page on the North Region SELPA website. We have compiled an extensive video library in the past events section of the page that has a ton of valuable information and resources. I also want to take a moment to note our upcoming event that is happening on March 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Zoom, titled Have Better IEP Meetings. The Los Angeles Regional State Council on Developmental Disabilities will present highlights from the booklet called IEP Strategies, Understanding the Process so you can get what you need. We'll drop a link to the flyer in the chat with all of the information during tonight's presentation. Please do spread the word and join us. Before I introduce our moderator this evening, I have a couple of housekeeping items. The first is that the chat is available, but we're asking that it be used exclusively to ask questions of the panelists. It is also being provided as an accommodation for people with disabilities who require it as a form of communication. Please minimize the commentary in the chat to commenting on what you're hearing and not to chat with others, as it will make it very difficult for us to pull the questions that we want to bring forward during the Q&A portion of the presentation. It also takes attention away from the presenters. So please try and use the chat exclusively to pose questions to the presenters. The CAC has sent questions to each district. In order to keep us within the 90 minutes and to have time for Q&A, each district will have 12 minutes to complete their presentation, which works out to be roughly 3 minutes per question. I will keep time this evening and will give a 2-minute warning when each district is nearing the end of their time. In the interest of time and giving each district equal time, we are presenting just the slides that we requested. The unabridged version of each district's presentation will be posted on the CAC website. Dinesh Kumar will advance the slides for us this evening, so please cue him when you're ready to move on in your presentation. And if you enjoy this presentation this evening, please consider joining the CAC as a voting member. We currently have no representation on the CAC for Emory Unified and only one of 3 seats filled for both Berkeley and Piedmont. During this evening's presentation, a membership application will be dropped into the chat. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce tonight's moderator, Dr. Kathy Futterman. Dr. Futterman has worked in the field of special education for the last 30 years, primarily with students with language-based learning issues in a variety of public and private settings. She is an executive board member of the Reading League, California, as the Director of Higher Education, and was a dyslexia and reading intervention curriculum specialist for the California Dyslexia Initiative at the Sacramento County Office of Education. She is currently an adjunct faculty at Cal State East Bay in the departments of educational psychology and teacher education, in addition to being the district-wide dyslexia and literacy education specialist with Mount Diablo Unified. She also has a private practice in Contra Costa County as a professional educational therapist, working directly with students and their families. Dr. Futterman, thank you so much for agreeing to moderate tonight. I'm going to pass the mic to you. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and happy to be here with all of you. I really appreciate all of the districts coming together to share this information tonight. I do have a few slides, but I don't I do have sharing capabilities, so that I'll share with you all just as a brief overview of what it is that we are kind of looking for and sort of the overall scope of the presentation. So I did just want to speak for a couple of minutes about MTSS, and that means multi-tiered systems of support. And you can hopefully see here with this infographic that the way that we look at it is that the majority of students are receiving their instruction, and this one is particularly focused on English language arts instruction and intervention, with a particular focus on those students who are struggling with reading acquisition and or dyslexia. But the students who are in Tier 1, that's the majority of our students, and they're about 80% of students who are receiving high quality evidence-based instruction and differentiated instruction as well, meaning that we're paying attention to the needs of the individual learners. And that's typically taught in whole group settings. There could be some small group settings as well. And I do want to highlight that this year is the first year the state of California is implementing our universal screener for reading risk for all students in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. So that's very exciting. And that happens in Tier 1, with progress monitoring typically occurring 3 times a year. And you're going to see the results of that for the 3rd graders and the 8th graders in the slides from the districts tonight. And ideally, there is a structured literacy approach that is incorporated into the core English language arts curriculum happening in Tier 1. And then you'll notice in the orange layer in Tier 2, that's for supplemental support, still happening in the general ed setting for approximately 15% of all students. That's targeted utilizing evidence-based intervention that's a little more intensive than what they were receiving whole group in the Tier 1 setting. And there is additional informal and diagnostic skill assessment that should be occurring on a regular basis, whether that's weekly or more than that. And then as I mentioned, ongoing progress monitoring until those students are mastering specific skills. And then we have Tier 3, which is typically viewed as the area where students may get a referral for special education, and then they would then, if they are found to be eligible for special ed and are operating under an IEP, that then they would get this individualized support for ideally about 2.5% of all students. That's very intensive remediation and intervention occurring either one-on-one or small group, with both formal standardized assessments that occur when the student initially is referred into special ed and then every 3 years, and then with ongoing daily progress monitoring, where we're taking in data on how they're doing for every lesson or every session where they're engaging in structured literacy instruction. And then you'll notice on the sides, there are elements or components of this MTSS approach, or multi-tiered systems of support, where the instruction has to be very systematic and cumulative. We're spiraling back and reviewing concepts previously learned. The instruction needs to be direct and explicit, multimodal, and diagnostic, where we're noticing when students are not making progress that we need to reteach, or if they are making progress, we're not holding them at that same concept and we're moving on to the next concept. And then on the right-hand side of the infographic, our materials must be culturally and linguistically responsive, including also having social and emotional supports for our students, has to be engaging and interactive. I do want to make sure people are noting that accommodations and modifications are occurring at all 3 tiers. So ideally, all 3 tiers are engaging in any kind of accommodations or modifications that need to be happening for student success. And that on the bottom, you'll see here that this approach is designed to be comprehensive, coherent, and collaborative. It is a team effort where we get information from all the stakeholders, including parents, around student success. So just a couple of quick notes to highlight for each tier. Like I mentioned, tier 1 is the whole group instruction. Universal screening is happening there. I did add a link here for something called TPE7, which is the Teacher Performance Expectation. We now have a new teaching standard here in the state of California that's titled Effective Literacy for all students. And every teacher who is credentialed in their multiple subject or their ed specialist, special ed credential, they need to meet the standards in in TPE 7, Teacher Performance Expectation 7, where they are very well versed in how to identify students who are struggling, identify students with dyslexia, be able to address foundational reading skills needs, all the way up to deep knowledge of comprehension building strategies and effective written expression as well. In tier 2, that's our data-driven small group instruction, like I mentioned, where there's ongoing progress monitoring, and it's really targeted for specific skills. And the idea is that this is a very fluid system, so the students might get that targeted instruction in tier 2 and then come back to the whole group gen ed tier 1 setting once those skills have been mastered. And there's the use of structured literacy curricula. And finally, tier 3, there would be a special ed referral and assignment of free and appropriate services, where there should be some daily progress monitoring happening in addition to the formal and informal assessments, and a real intensive use of structured literacy curricula happening with any and all repetition needed, visual aids, and any accommodations that students may need. And lastly, some points to consider that every teacher or every educator, whichever tier they might be operating at, is receiving ongoing coaching and mentoring, including for the aides, not only in structured literacy, but in the science of reading in general. And that is an ongoing collaborative review of student data amongst either grade levels, intervention teams, however the different sites and districts are organized, and to really highlight those model classrooms and teachers who have mastered implementation and have shown growth in student achievement. That can be a real advantage and really promote not only teacher self-efficacy, where they see how their knowledge has improved the student achievement, but also so that they can continue to be collaborative with their colleagues and their peers. And then to potentially train select educators to be dyslexia and literacy specialists at each site. That's a recommendation. And then to continue providing that ongoing professional development in the science of reading, literacy, and written expression. And all the districts have a slide dedicated to how they're addressing that, as well as their English language arts curriculum. So I will stop there. And thank you for letting me present on that. And now we are very pleased to welcome Alameda Unified's presentation with Kirsten Zazau. Which I hopefully said your name correctly.
Hi, everybody. I'm actually going to introduce Tanya Harris and Shana Reihart. Tanya is our Director of Elementary Education. Shana is our Literacy Coordinator who will be presenting tonight.
Hi, everyone, and Kirsten. I want to also just introduce George, our Senior Director of Special Education, who is going to jump in at any time as well, if that's okay. I'm Tanya Harris. As Kirsten said, I am the Director for Elementary Education, and I'm going to be facilitating this slide deck with my colleague, Shana.
Good evening, everybody. I am Shana Reihart. I am the Coordinator of Language and Literacy for Alameda Unified.
Good evening. I'm George Wainers, Director of Special Education.
Next slide,
Yeah,
please. There we
Yeah.
go.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to go over is our third grade reading data. And so specifically which third graders are meeting or exceeding the standards. So in 23-24 school year, we saw some notable gains in third grade. But unfortunately, we saw a decrease in these gains in 24-25. And unfortunately, some of the sharpest declines that we did see were among our focal students, which include our Black and African American students, our students with disabilities, and our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. However, we saw a relatively bright spot with our Hispanic students. Those students were holding essentially flat with just a small decline. Just to note that if you look at the table, the small table below the bar graphs, you'll see that when we're talking about the focal student groups, we don't have many students in this particular area, which impacts our sample size. And so, for example, you'll see that students with IEPs are 74, and our Black and African American students are 40 students in third grade across the district. Next slide.
So this is our data for our eighth graders, and you'll see many similar patterns that Tanya just named, that most of our student groups declined during the 24-25 school year after gains made in the 23-24 school year. Our African American students declined by 16%. Our socioeconomically disadvantaged students declined by 12%. And our students with IEPs declined by 11%. Again, reflecting the vulnerability of our
10.7%.
Say that again?
Keep going.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Again, reflecting the vulnerability of our highest needs students, I will also say an area of gain is if you look across for our two or more races as well as our Asian American students, you can see gains from last year. And as Tanya noted in our our third grade slide, you also have our sample size for our various students group here on this slide as well. Next slide, please.
So what we can say is that the pattern is consistent amongst third grade and eighth grade. We didn't sustain the gains that we made during the 23-24 school year. However, you'll see that third and eighth grade are sort of anomalies. We didn't see that same level of decrease in gains in the other grade levels that took the SBAC. So we're super curious about what is going on, and we're doing some work to really drill down and try to uncover some potential root causes. But what this data did tell us is that we have an urgency around continuing to prioritize our strategic focal areas or our strategic priorities, which include early literacy, preschool through third grade alignment, our focal student approach, and inclusive practices. And so all of our efforts are really geared around these strategic areas. Next slide.
Here you can see the curriculum that we are using in both the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 for our K-5 as well as our middle school 6-8. It's important to note that we are presently going through an elementary ELA adoption, and we will be making a recommendation to the board in May. And for our middle school team, we are starting the adoption process with piloting occurring next year and a recommendation to the board the following spring.
So for the third grade or the elementary curriculum that we're currently using, for Tier 1, we are using the Center for Collaborative Classroom, or CCC, including being a reader, making meaning, being a writer, and IBD. As Shana mentioned, this is our last year with this particular curriculum. We are currently piloting 3 curricula, Wonders, Benchmark, and EL Education. For writing, we are currently using Step Up to Writing as a Tier 1 and Tier 2 supplement. And then for Tier 2 interventions, we're using SIPS. One of the things that we did do starting last year actually is we purchased SIPS kits for our elementary schools. And so we're able to support Tier 2 support using SIPS during our response to intervention blocks within the embedded in the master schedule, which is a shift. In prior years, we were mostly doing SIPS as a pullout. And so this has increased access for more students to SIPS. We're also using Lexia Core 5. For our younger students, for our K2 students, we're using Amira Tutoring for Tier 2 support, and that's aligned to our early reading difficulty screener. And then for Tier 3, we are continuing to use Orton Gillingham in a small group or a one-to-one setting. ISME is who we use for training. Our replacement curriculum is N2Y Unique and all accessible literacy learning. We're also this year piloting Ignite Reading at 3 of our elementary schools, which is a Tier 3 program that we're seeing some pretty promising gains for.
Yeah, and Orton Gillingham is our primary SAI support for literacy in elementary school and in middle school.
And I'll just say that one of the great things about the fact that we were able to really implement a master schedule and focus on inclusive practices is that more of our students are getting access to Orton Gillingham, regardless of whether they have an IEP or not. And it is embedded within that RTI block. And so we are we're not pulling kids out of Tier 1 and oftentimes Tier 2 instruction. And so our kids are getting the 3 doses, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And Shana, you want to talk about 6th through 8th grade?
Sure. So our Tier 1 curriculum for 6th through 8th grade is Inquiry by Design, and we are using Lexia Power Up and Lexia English as our Tier 2 curriculum. Our Tier 3 curriculum is mirrors what was just shared in our elementary spaces. So OG by IMSE, and then our replacement curriculums as previously named. Next slide.
So for our universal screening and our tools that we're using for progress monitoring, as mentioned, Amira is the screener that we just adopted, and that's for K2. And we give that screener 3 times a year, and those benchmark assessments do come with a family report. However, when students are receiving interventions, including Amira tutoring or Ignite tutoring or SIPS tutoring, we can use Amira to progress monitor. So while the expectation is that all students in K2 are screened 3 times a year, the expectation also is that students that are going through cycles of intervention also are screened more regularly every 6 to 8 weeks. For grades 3 through 12, we use STAR reading. And again, 3 times a year with family reports. However, students are going through cycles of intervention. We are using STAR to progress monitor. And then we're using benchmark assessments through our curriculum 1 time a year. And then we're doing a writing assessment 3 times a year. And then when we have students that are participating in SIPs, we're using the SIPs mastery tests for both a pre and post cycles of intervention. Next slide.
As you can see, this is our professional development plan. What I will also say is that our professional development plan has been deliberately front-loaded to prepare staff for the shifts that we will be making with our curriculum adoption. And we've already started to lay the groundwork on a 3-year implementation plan for that would support teachers, coaches, support staff, and site leaders around the newly adopted ELA curriculum. In K-5, we have professional development rooted in literacy best practices through Shifting the Balance, SIPs, Inquiry by Design, culturally and linguistically responsive pedagogy with Dr. Holly. And we have recently released an AUSD literacy framework that directly aligns with the CDE literacy guidance and their recently released literacy content blocks. Our secondary teachers receive Inquiry by Design training once a year, and we know that that is lays an important foundation to professional development that we can build upon. What I will say before I continue is I just want us to take a step back and talk about the frequency of PD for K through 5 teachers. So we have summer PD offerings, we have 2 contractual days, and our culturally and linguistically responsive training is supported throughout the school year with coaching by Dr. Holly at some of our sites.
Next slide. I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was very thorough and very clear to follow. So really appreciate that. I think we do have time for a couple of questions from participants. If anybody has any questions for Alameda. Can we hear more about using STAR to progress monitor?
Sure. So we give STAR 3 times a year for grades 3, 4, 5, and secondary as well. And then anytime that a student is receiving a tier 2 or a tier 3 intervention, we recommend to the coordination of services team at the school site that they implement STAR to use as a way to progress monitor how well students are responding to that particular intervention. It's not the only data that we collect, but it is one way that we do collect data in a very systematic way. That data is then used, the cost team takes that data and then unpacks what's going on with the student and then makes shifts as needed. And then the coaches, as well as the site leaders, work with the professional learning communities or the grade level bands at the school sites to look at data as well from STAR. So 3 times a year, certainly, and then for students who need additional support ongoing. And we can give STAR, I believe, once a week, actually. So almost as often as we like. And it's the same for Amira as well for our
Just
K2.
want to also tag on that we have what are called PLC leads at each of our sites. And those PLC leads also, every time STAR is given, they bring that data to their professional learning communities. They look at it together and determine how to support students in the RTI periods and our response to intervention periods. So that's another level, a layer that our leads are helping our teachers also determine ongoing intervention for students inside the classroom. So we don't want to just think about pull out or think about extra, but what's actually happening in the tier 1 and tier 2 as well in relation to the STAR.
And why not Amira? Amira was adopted for as our early literacy screener. And so it's for the lower grades. It was not an option for us, K5. what type of curricular assessments. And so CCC has set placement assessments. Oh, in grade six and up. Okay, I'll let Shayna speak to that. Is
Yes.
curricular assessment
So
in grade six or up? Okay.
yes, yes, yes. So Inquiry by Design is our board approved curriculum. There are assessments within that. We also, as Tanya mentioned, use STAR K8. So we're looking at that as a progress monitoring tool. And I previously mentioned that we are using Lexia as tier 2. Lexia also provides progress monitoring data.
And we are in the beginning stages of developing an RTI model. We're piloting RTI built into the master schedule in secondary right now. And so we will also be introducing our literacy framework to our secondary teachers and supporting them in evidence-based practices for teaching reading. And so that's the next phase of the work. Right now, we have been primarily focused on the elementary ELA adoption and also K2 literacy or early literacy. The next phase of the work includes secondary in a much more intentional way.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Alameda? I think that might be it. Well, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. Our next district to present is Albany Unified with Karen Schreiner, I believe.
Hi there, everyone. Sarah, did you want to say anything to start us off, or do you want me to jump right in?
No, I'm happy to let you jump in and do your thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for the invitation. My name is Karen Schreiner. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning for Albany Unified. I'm very new to Albany. I started this past July, so it's been a real privilege and pleasure to get to know our really experienced and committed educators throughout the district. And so I'm going to share a little bit around our end of year data from this past year. And share a bit of an analysis that our team has been working through, as well as some of the shifts that we have been putting in place since Sarah's tenure. And I'm excited to learn from the group and hopefully get some great questions to push our practice. So you can see here on the slide our results from our third graders over the past 3 years on our ELA SBAC. And this data reflects, as you all know, where we were in June, which really is in many ways still the beginning stages of Albany's shift away from balanced literacy and towards evidence-based structured literacy implementation. Our big work over the next 5 years or so in Albany is really around embracing evidence-based practices across our entire system and moving towards more instructional coherence. And so with that in mind, this past end of year, so you can see 74% of our third graders met or exceeded standard, which is a 6-point increase from the prior year. And we also saw some exciting growth in several of our student groups. Our Black students increased to 57%. Our Latino students increased significantly, as well as our students with disabilities. So there's absolutely some bright spots here to be celebrating in terms of some of our focal subgroups. And a lot of that is due to our incredibly committed educators and site leaders who've contributed to that work. And again, at the same time, this is really before we because they're still on this journey towards a more coherent district-wide evidence-based literacy system. So we're excited about what the future holds for us. And at the same time, we absolutely have gaps that remain super substantial when holding in mind a lens on equity and our students who are historically the furthest from opportunity. So, our white students are at 86%, while our Black students are at 57%, which is nowhere near where we want to be. So this is really the beginning of our work and the promise of what is to come, but really recognize that inconsistency and that persistent inequity. And our work is really going to be about building a system that makes improvement predictable and not variable for students. You can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. When we look at eighth grade, we really see why this shift is necessary. So overall, while 74% of students met or exceeded standard, there's that 4-point decline from the prior year. Our white students declined, our Asian American students declined, and more concerning here are our focal student subgroups. When we look at our performance of our Black students declining to 37% in eighth grade, and really those low proficiency rates for our students with disabilities and our Latino students. And so this kind of variability really from year to year and across student subgroups tells us, why this work is so important. And the shifts that we're putting in place towards a coherent research-based literacy system across, really we're starting the work in K-5, but scaling over time to secondary is really necessary so that our historically underserved students, can get the outcomes that they absolutely deserve. So while our third grade results show promise, our eighth grade results really highlight some instability there. You can go ahead and transition to our next slide. So here you can see what is currently happening. And I'm sorry for the not, I don't think this is the most updated slide deck, so there's a few typos I'm seeing, so I apologize for that. But you can see here that we are currently using a large variety of curricula across Albany. And in my these first 7 or so months that I've been here, one of the big things that has come to light in many conversations with teachers and many grade level team meetings and many professional development spaces and staff meetings is that our educators are using many different materials and are using a lot of created materials too, and are pulling from many different places, which is why we are in the process of engaging in a curriculum adoption process similar to Alameda. So we're deep in the midst of that right now, so that we can get to a place where all of our educators across all grades and across all sites are using curricula that's aligned with the science of reading. And so right now, we've piloted Fish Tank in the fall, and we're currently piloting core knowledge language arts for our ELA curriculum for next year. And the other thing that I have learned in my time in Albany is that we're using or supplementing from more than 10 different phonics programs really across our system. And that really came historically from a place of teachers seeing that the units of study, which is still currently our board adopted curriculum, was not meeting students' phonics needs, and teachers really advocated for professional learning and advocated for better materials. And so Foundations is in place in many K2 classrooms, but not all. So not all of our K2 students are getting evidence-based phonics instruction right now. And that's something we're really working hard to shift. This year, a major initiative that we're tackling, I think Alameda, you all called it maybe your RTI block or your MTSS block. We call it our win time, what I need time, where every child across our system during a master scheduled block of time is, either engaged in intervention if they need that through SIPs, and that's determined through I'm getting ahead of the slide here, but that's determined through students' DIBELS assessment if they need intervention. And if students don't need intervention, they're still getting the targeted support that they need. Sometimes that's with an interventionist, sometimes that's with a classroom teacher. And so that's been a lot of our work this year is helping our teachers really understand the power of that assessment and how to best leverage their time with students during win time. Let's see. I think you can move to our next slide, and I'll circle back if we need. And this is what I was just saying. Sorry that I added this slide. I broke the rule about using the same format. I didn't know that, so I apologize for that. But the goal next year is to really have that aligned curriculum in place, both around the language strand of Scarborough's Rope, but also the foundational skills strand. And so we are at a place where teachers really recognize the need for aligned curriculum, which is exciting. Our adoption committee conducted more than 30 empathy interviews with teachers and found really clear themes of what teachers want, which is, they want a place where they're starting from robust materials that are going to better serve students' needs. And so while I think, change is hard and change is grief and change is loss, teachers are excited to embark in a more coherent system when it comes to literacy. And so right now, the two curricula that we're considering for phonics are SIPs, which we're already using for tier 2, but we're considering scaling that across our tiers. And then the second curriculum that we'll be piloting this fall is UFly. So we're excited to have some more clarity and coherence next year in the world of phonics as well. Go ahead to the next slide. And yes, Lindsay, I saw that UFly is expanding into those upper grades. So that just came across my LinkedIn feed the other week. So we'll be excited to look into that. In terms of our universal screener, we use DIBELS K5. So that's been new this year. And we are in 6-8, we also have a new assessment that was selected by teachers last spring, STAR as well. So that has been new for our middle school teachers too. In terms of elementary, because that's been really where a lot of the focus is this year. And you can go to the next slide since this connects. Our PD plan has been to partner with Core Learning this year, which has been really great. They've been supporting our curriculum adoption process, and we unfortunately don't currently have any TSAs or coaches or APs at the elementary level. And so myself and our consultant from Core have been doing a lot of direct work with teachers, our interventionists and our classroom teachers, and our Core consultant has been providing coaching to our piloting teachers as well. And so once a month, our K2 and 3-5 teachers come together for professional learning that's facilitated either by myself or Core, which has been a challenge this year in some ways because we don't have an aligned curriculum. And really the best professional learning is grounded in evidence-based practices tied to a high quality curriculum. So we've been approaching that this year from a curriculum agnostic stance and trying to, I think, as the folks from Alameda said earlier, really lay the groundwork for the curriculum adoption that will be happening next year by grounding in instructional practices that can be applied to any curriculum. So I think in the world of K2, that has been very successful. We have an average, we give like a PD survey at the end of every session where folks can rate scale of 1 to 5, and our average score right now is 4.3, which has grown from a 3.8 at the start of the year. So teachers in the lower grades especially are feeling I think more positive and supported in that space because foundational skills practices, when you are trained as a teacher, you can take a curriculum that is lacking and improve it. And it's so much more complex in the upper grades when we're focused on the language strand. So that's been a lot harder, especially because we still have teachers, who are pulling from the units of study. But we're excited to really focus the use of our one-time funds next year on support for implementation of our ELA curriculum that gets selected. And then whether we go with SIPs across the tiers or whether we go with UFly, we'll know that by late fall. I feel like I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to pause here and see if I missed anything, and I'll check the chat and see if there's any questions.
There's a question about our plans for 6-8 PD.
Yeah, great question. This year, a lot of our work in secondary has been around building up to have stronger instructional leadership teams at the site and bringing our principals together to, really grow their capacity to serve as instructional leaders. And so currently, our PD in secondary is site facilitated by our instructional leadership teams.
And to just piggyback off of that, can you clarify what the Tier 1 ELA curriculum is in 6th through 8th grade? It said selected text or something.
Yeah, so the current curriculum in 6th through 8th grade it's all text and novel studies that are board approved. There's not the use of an adopted curriculum.
So
is that historically how you've done it? And okay. And are you thinking about shifting that or?
We are very much in the midst of change management for sure. And so we're trying to be very thoughtful about what we're tackling at what time, knowing that all of this work is really urgent for students and we can't lose the people as we go along with this work. And so Our sixth grade teachers are currently the model historically, I believe, in Albany is that it's a multiple subjects model, and so even though they operate on the middle school campus, teachers teach all subjects. And I just met with our middle school principal who shared that the sixth grade teachers are really interested in exploring the curricula that we are piloting. And so, though CKLA does not extend beyond fifth grade, my strong prediction is that the team will select Fish Tank just based on all the individual conversations I've had with teachers. And Fish Tank goes 6 through 12. So I'll be linking up some sixth grade teachers with some elementary teachers to share about their experience, and see what's ripe for tackling next.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for all the information that you shared here and the exciting growth you're seeing in third grade and your thoughtfulness around aligning your curricula across the tiers. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think we can, oh, we have one more question for you. Sorry. What do you use for progress monitoring? But
We use progress monitoring from Dibbles, and so this is not reflected in the slides, but essentially the guidance that we use for progress monitoring is that if students score at high risk, so if they're well below on Dibbles, they're progress monitored biweekly. Is the recommendation. If they score yellow or at some risk, they're progress monitored monthly. And then we use the phrase soft green, meaning like they're just barely proficient within 5 points. Students are progress monitored once between screener windows. And so we just wrapped our MLY data and I met with our interventionists and our principals to support grade level teams in analyzing their middle of year data, create action plans, adjust win groups, and then consider shifts in progress monitoring recommendations based on student growth.
okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right, I think now we're going to shift to Berkeley Unified, and we have Jill Hugendijk presenting for Berkeley Unified.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Hogendijk. I am the Associate Superintendent for the Ed Services Department here in Berkeley, and I'm excited that our Director of Curriculum Instruction, Chris Albeck, is also joining us. So we're going to tag team on this presentation. So starting with our data sets. So in third grade, we have seen overall some growth for our third grade. You see on the chart on the left that over the last 3 years, from our 22-23 results, where our third graders were scoring at 70% at or above benchmark, that has grown to 72% over that 3-year period. So not a tremendous amount of growth, but definitely an uptick from the prior year. For our ethnic and program groups, things have either remained relatively flat or have decreased over that same period of time. So you see some increases for our white and Asian students, and not for our Black and African American students or our Hispanic Latino students. Our students with IEPs have been flat over the last 2 years, but a decrease overall from 22-23. So in Berkeley, we have what we call a 3x5 target, which is a 3% growth for all students and 5% for our focal student groups. And so we have not met that target for our third grade students. If you go to the next slide, there are some stronger results for our eighth grade students. Eighth grade was really an outlier for our middle school over the last 3 years. So again, from 22-23 to the current testing window, that was an overall 2% growth, but 5% from the previous year. But here we do see that while we did not meet our 3x5 target for our Black African American students,
We did for our Hispanic Latino students and our students with IEPs. And we were really close for our students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch. So there are definitely some bright spots that we can acknowledge for our 8th grade students. Before I turn it over to Director Albeck, I just want to acknowledge it's really fun to see what Alameda and Albany are up to, because I think we're all in various stages of implementation and moving to a new curriculum. Berkeley has really spent the last 3 years building a literacy infrastructure, starting with the core learning training that I just saw Albany was doing the year before last, and then building our capacity to support a curriculum adoption specifically for our elementary grades, and then leading into a shift in instructional resources. So we are in the middle of year 1 implementation for a new curriculum at our elementary grades, and I'll let Director Albeck talk about that across the next few slides.
Thanks, Jill. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Chris Albeck. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction, TK12 for Berkeley Unified School District. Next slide, please. So this slide identifies the different curriculums that we are using currently in Berkeley Unified School District. So as Associate Superintendent Hogendijk just said, we are in our first year of implementation of our new English Language Arts curriculum, both at our English only schools and at our TWI dual immersion school. So for our 10 elementary English only schools, we are using functional phonics and functional morphology as our foundational skills curriculum, paired with Fish Tank as our knowledge building curriculum. At our TWI elementary school, we are using Arriba la Lectura, and we are using Esperanza as our foundational skills curriculum. For Tier 2 and Tier 3, we are using OG or Orton Gillingham. We're also using a version of functional phonics in Tier 2, and then in Tier 3, we're also using a version of Wilson. For our middle school, we are using Inquiry by Design. We are also supplementing with constructing meaning and core practices. For Tier 2 intervention, we are using Rewards, Rewards Plus, IOG, and OG Morphology as different forms depending on the student's rate of unfinished learning. And then Tier 3, we are using OG and OG Morphology. Next slide, please. As it relates to our screeners, we are using DIBELS for K2. We are administering DIBELS 3 times per year, and after each administration, there's a Home Connect survey that gets sent home. As it relates to 3 through 9, we are using STAR, again, 3 times per year with a family report sent home. For our progress monitoring, we are using DIBELS, the oral reading fluency across K8, averaging every 3 weeks, and then identified in our data EduClimber resource to monitor tracking and progress monitoring. We share this through IEPs, SST, and also family conferences. We are also pinpointing points of unfinished learning using a variety of diagnostic tools. So depending on where a student is, depending on the screener, we are then providing diagnostic assessments. We're using the core assessment reading, multiple measures. We're also using functional phonics has built-in formative assessments, and we're using this across K8 and then progress monitoring. We're also, one of the great things of having a new curriculum, specifically Fish Tank and functional phonics, is we have content embedded assessments, which we are using. So in addition to screening, we have content-based assessments that we are using to reflect and to improve our practice to meet our students' needs. Next slide, please. So we believe that a curriculum is only as good as the support that we provide, as well as the monitoring infrastructure that a district creates to ensure that the curriculum is implemented as intended. So we have heavily invested our time over the last 3 years, starting from shifting the balance in 22-23 to the core reading academy in 23-24, to the implementation of our diagnostic plan in 24-25, to our year of implementation this year. So we have a significant amount of professional learning that is happening across our school district. Our TK through 5 teachers are receiving around 10 doses of professional development specifically on literacy throughout this school year. 5 of those are sub-release days where our teachers are sorry, where our teachers are going through the intellectual preparation for the units that are upcoming. In addition to that, we have 4 site-based Wednesdays that are occurring, and we also have our 2 main professional development days. At 6-8, we are partnering with CORE again. We're focusing on vocabulary and comprehension. We have 4 middle school collaboration dates where all 3 of our middle schools come together to work with our core partners in addition to our 2 day-long professional learning. We also are providing support for our 9-12 educators through our professional learning days. Special educators are also partnering with OG and CORE. Admin is going through our own instructional leadership series, facilitated by curriculum instruction. And our support staff, including IAs and other instructional support, are providing same professional learning. A lot of that, for those of you that are considering Fish Tank, one of the big things, as you already know, is that their training model is a train the trainer model. So we are leaning heavily on our site-based experts. We currently offer FTE for each of our school sites to have site-based literacy coaches. So currently with our Fish Tank train the trainer model is we are guiding our teachers, depending on the grade level, through the intellectual preparation. So it's not a representation, it's not a representative from Fish Tank. It is our own literacy coordinator, Rose James, and literacy TSA, Erica Carter, that are doing that internalization and then working with our site literacy TSAs to then provide the training to BUSD teachers. We know that our teachers usually trust folks that they see and that they know, so we feel like it's going rather well. But that is one thing to consider if you are piloting Fish Tank out there. Next slide, please. Oh, I think that's it. We added a few different slides for implementation, but we'll leave it for that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And definitely really appreciate the last slide. You have a robust professional development plan happening. So thank you for delineating all that. Looks like we have some questions in the chat. Let me just try to comb through them a second. Is there, let's see. Yes. Is there any curriculum-based monitoring for Tier 3 students in middle school?
Yes. Sorry, say that question one more time.
Sure. Is there any curriculum-based, I think, progress monitoring for Tier 3 students in middle school?
Yes, there is progress monitoring of Tier 3 at middle school. Similar to what we are doing at the elementary level, there is interventions happening at the middle school, depending on which reading support class there is, or if they're getting direct service through their case manager or ELD coordinator. And then we're progress monitoring similarly, either through ORF or through another diagnostic measure in what we are using as EduClimber for our progress monitoring.
Could I?
Yeah, and I just want to elevate Karen's response in the chat too, because one of the things that we did through the course of our own learning and shift to more alignment with the science of reading, particularly for the elementary school, was this recognition that ORF is highly correlated to predictions around reading comprehension. So ORF is the assessment that we're using across the board. And I will say that progress monitoring has also just been it was a shift for us. We were administering the assessment, but the progress monitoring piece was a layer. So how we're monitoring all of our case managers and other site specialists to ensure that students who are scoring below benchmark are also being progress monitored has been an important component of building an infrastructure to support learning at our schools.
Yeah, great. Can we go back to the slide around curriculum for each of the tiers? We have a question around clarifying why IBD is aligned to evidence-based instruction? Or two questions about that. I don't see I don't know what IBD is referring to.
IBD is referring to Inquiry by Design, which is a curriculum that I believe Alameda and also Berkeley Unified School District are using at the middle school. I think for those of us who live in the education world, there is a lot of curriculum out there that say that it either is science of reading aligned or is not science of reading aligned. I think if you were to ask many of these publishers, most of them at this point would say we are science of reading aligned for many of the reasons that we might consider. I think it's our responsibility as the district to look into that to determine where are the balanced literacy practices, where are the evidence-based practices. So I think for IBD, I think there could be some debate around whether this really is a science of reading or an evidence-based practice aligned curriculum. I would imagine that if we ask the curriculum providers, they might have a different opinion.
Yeah, and then I had wanted to mention, but I didn't think I did it on my last slide, that if you aren't already familiar, but the Reading League has their curriculum navigation reports and their curriculum ways to assess if certain curricula are aligned with the science of reading or not. So I don't know, that could just be something that people are interested in engaging in. I think it can be some helpful rubrics and information there. Let's see. I think I'd like to. Andrea has a follow-up question about structured literacy.
Hi, thanks. Now let me see if I can ask this properly. Yeah, what I was asking about is for Tier 3 middle school students who are receiving MC or in Gillingham, I presume that's level 1 or 2, or MC morphology. Are curricula based, meaning MC or in Gillingham or MC morphology, assessment or progress monitoring used for those students? Or is the only monitoring they're getting based on the IEP goals and the DIBELS progress monitoring?
So I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, in the middle school, our students take the STAR as part of their screener. For students who are scoring below benchmark or who need progress monitoring because they've been identified for Tier 3 support, they're going to be progress monitored with ORF as a starting place.
Yeah, so what I'm wondering, and this could also be for the other districts, so there's progress monitoring, but to find out where the student is at in the many areas, what's being used to kind of assess through the structured literacy curricula where they're at so that they can actually receive Orton Gillingham methodology-based intervention, which would be in their different skill areas, which may not be all at the same level.
Yeah, for students in BUSD, we have been training most of our site-based interventionists in Orton Gillingham, and so any intake that those interventionists would have for those students, they'd be using, that battery of assessments to pinpoint any of those specific areas that need to be addressed, and they would then pick that up with the appropriate corresponding intervention through OG. And in some cases with Wilson.
Okay, so it sounds like and since OG is the MC programs, then it would be through that curriculum then, or Wilson.
Specifically for the assessment that they're using and the Tier 2 intervention. Some of our students in middle school are in intervention course through rewards, and that also has embedded assessment. So there's a battery of potential assessments that a student could take. And then for students with IEPs, that would be lined up with their specific IEP goals and any of the actions that they're working toward through the through what's articulated in the IEP.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand that. I'm a parent of a student who's in tier 3 and in need of intensive literacy instruction in your district. So again, I was just wondering about that because in order to have decent goals, one needs to have the very specific structured literacy typed detailed data that's based on assessments. So if the detailed assessments are not done, then one does not have the data to write the goals that the student needs to get closer to grade level. But thank you for clarifying, and I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you so much. Caroline, is this question for Berkeley? How do you define what is evidence-based? Yes. Okay. We would like to know, how do you define what is evidence-based?
I think we all of our teachers and our leaders and administrators, we all went through, like I said, the shifting of the balance, book study, and then we all went through the Core Reading Academy in the year of 24-25 to learn about all the different parts of the reading rope. And then as we went through our curriculum adoption process, we were fortunate enough to work with our consultants at the University of Minnesota, who had done a national study on the available curriculums and a significant amount of time and resources as it relates to every single component of what an evidence-based literacy program is. And based on her results, we were able to identify a set of curriculum materials that we in Berkeley Unified District were able to pilot. So as it relates to Chris Albeck's definition versus a literacy expert's definition, it might be different. I think each of us that are here as a unified school district, we come at this work with our full hearts and our best interest and the knowledge set that we have. And we are fortunate to work in a community where there's lots of experts, and we try our best to make sure that our decisions are as research and informed. And we know there's a lot of university and, like I said, consultants available, which we do lean into and try to get advice from to ensure that the programs that we bring to our students are the most evidence-based. So that's a long-winded question of, I think there's different interpretations of what this is. And at least as it relates to Berkeley and our approach to the screening assessments and to the curriculum that we just shared with you, we feel very confident that the programs being used with Berkeley students and provided to Berkeley teachers are very much aligned with what the science of reading would suggest are high quality programs.
Thank you. We appreciate that. It's a very thoughtful answer for a challenging question. Okay. Are there any, let's see, if there's some time for one more question, can Berkeley Unified talk about PD follow-ups and support for teachers in coaching, observation, and feedback cycles?
Sure. So like shared, we firmly believe that even if it is the most evidence-based curriculum, unless implemented with integrity and unless supported, then our students and our teachers are potentially getting a disservice. And so with that, as you have seen here in our PD plan, our district has provided a significant amount of resources as it relates to support. So for those of you that have been working with CORE, you'll know the mantra, you learn it, you expect it, you support it, and then you monitor it. And we feel very strongly that Berkeley Unified School District as a system have invested a lot into learning what the science of reading is and all the components of effective literacy instruction. And we've done a significant amount of training, whether that be our sub-release days or our Wednesday PD days or our day-long PD days. But we also are fortunate to have FTE at the school site, where we have site-based literacy coaches who are not doing coaching all the time. We still have tier 2 implementation. We have PD facilitation, but there is a lot of co-teaching. There's a lot of model lessons. There's a lot of observing and then debriefing with individual teachers. We are currently working on a coaching plan, a coaching program that we are looking to implement in the next few years. We haven't necessarily settled on that. We've been looking at different frameworks, one of them student-centered coaching, and there's a variety of other ones out there. So to Lindsay's question, PD, follow-up, support for teachers and coaching, observation, feedback cycles. Another significant component of this that is important for any district that's going into implementation is where are the site leaders in all of this? So I believe really strongly thinking about like who is carrying your implementation torch. And yes, central office has to really be carrying that torch, but leaning really into your site leaders, making sure that they're on board, making sure that they have their own expertise. That's why they went to the Core Reading Academy in Berkeley Unified School District. And what does it look like for your site leaders to be supporting and to be cheerleading and that literacy change effort at your school sites? Not only, certainly not evaluative, but like, hey, make sure that they know what the program is, what the expectations are, what the instructional minutes are, and how can they also be giving the feedback and observation notes. So we've invested a lot into informal observation and feedback this year. So it's not only on the TSA or the director of curriculum instruction or the associate soup, but it's also really thinking about how our site leaders can really step into that instructional leadership and be a part of that observation feedback for teachers.
Yeah, I would just add too, I think that level of observation and feedback is happening horizontally as well as vertically. So we have a number of our site leaders who have scheduled substitute release times so that teachers can go observe each other, or coaches are relieving teachers so that they can observe each other. We have one district literacy coordinator and a district TSA. Erica Carter and Rose James, Chris had mentioned before. They are also out at school sites and they're pulling up those observations as they conduct their bi-monthly meetings with their literacy coaches. And the literacy coaches and other site-based specialists have been integral in planning our release days. So we've had grade level release days periodically throughout the year to bring teachers across the grade level together. And then we also have bi-monthly instructional walkthroughs. So Chris, myself, our supervisor over our principals, along with the principals and coaches, are doing instructional walkthroughs at our school sites so that we're also getting that feedback vertically.
Thank you so much, Jill and
Thank
Chris,
you.
for those thorough responses. We're going to keep it moving. Thank you, Kathy. Take it away.
Sure. Thank you. Next, we have Emory Unified presenting with Sasha Kirkman.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here with everyone tonight. I'm Sasha Kirkman. I'm a instructional coach and consultant with Emory. Emory serves around 800 students in just 3 schools. So as you know, we're a small district. Core values are really around excellence, equity, and engagement with a high expectation, high support environment, where all students, are supported to reach their full potential, and also valuing strong partnerships with our community and families. So it's again a pleasure to be here. And here is our 3rd grade data. One thing that's just about having such a small district is that our data sets sometimes can be small and ever changing. So sometimes we're not looking at the same groups because we do have students moving in and out as well. So that's just always an interesting thing when we're looking at our data. So, we also had the same that I'm hearing in other districts where we could see where there was not sustaining some gains that we had made in earlier on. We had some of the same patterns that are happening that other districts have mentioned. Particularly looking, at our Hispanic and Latino students, we made some gains, but then, made losses there. So we really are looking at that for third grade. And, you know, again, you know, in certain areas like what we have for our third grade for students with disabilities, it was a very small group, but like we are at 0%, you know, with that. So we're, you know, obviously looking closely at the patterns that are emerging from the data. You know, like Asian American students were, you know, at, you know, 75%, but then took a big dip and then came back up. So it's, you know, we're, you know, looking at that data, but you can go to the next slide, please. All right, and for eighth grades, some of the similar patterns, and the one concerning, you know, one that I'm really looking at, or we're looking at here, is our dip in Latino students. That was a big dip. So we really are looking at what happened with that, and doing some more sort of inquiry into that particular group. And yeah, so next slide. Okay, so what we're doing, we have been in a pilot year for 2 years now. We've been piloting. We're also, that has been a real shift for us, has been shifting from, you know, non-science of reading or non, you know, evidence-based, as was so, you know, eloquently teased out in the last presentation. So we've been really leaning into pilots, and we started piloting last year, and we're piloting this year as well. And that should be, the date on there should be changed. That's a typo, or didn't update that. So, but we're looking at 2 curriculums at Amplify or Core Knowledge, CKLA, and Arts and Letters, which was formerly Wit and Wisdom. So what's interesting is last year we were piloting Wit and Wisdom, but then they changed to Arts and Letters and put out a new program. And so this year teachers wanted to have some experience with that in order to compare. So that's that. And for our Tier 1 supplement, we use iReady and Accelerated Reader. For Tier 2 intervention, the Orton Gillingham RAS Plus and Vocabulary. And one thing I think that, well, I guess I'll talk about it more in professional development. We've been really focusing on trying to get, you know, consistent materials into teachers' hands, and it's come up in other presentations, like having not teachers just kind of go up and pick and choose, but you know, have really consistent instruction in all the classrooms. So for our middle schools, 6th grade is piloting CKLA right now, but for 7th and 8th grade, it is novel study, which was mentioned before. That is what our board approved curriculum is for right now for middle school. And we also use iReady and Accelerated Reader at middle school. But for middle school, we're also using, for Tier 2 and Tier 3, using SIPs as needed. Okay, next slide. Okay, so for our universal screening curriculum-based monitoring, our screener is DIBELS K5, which is at least 2 times per year and as needed. And the data is shared with parents, teachers conferences, because we have student-led conferences is how report cards are shared with families. So that's how that data is shared. And then this is what we're getting familiar with because it's all new and we're piloting, but with Amplify and both Arts and Letters there, as another, I think Berkeley mentioned, there's embedded reading assessments. And so we've been using those. And at least paying, 3 times a year. Teachers are maybe doing more, but at least committing to 3 times a year and looking at some of that data together. And then it shouldn't be question marks. That actually is IDA aligned, both Amplify and Arts and Letters curriculum, at least. This has come up before. The publishers cite that is where, that they are using practices from IDA and Science of Reading. And next slide. Okay, so for professional development plans is what I was getting, into. We really have been focusing on the last 2 years and getting everybody kind of trained, everybody, on board with Orton Gillingham and our pilot programs. So last year, actually, our 3-5 teachers also got Orton Gillingham. It's taken us 2 years to get everybody on site, and then as we also get turnover on a new teacher. So we're just making sure that everybody is getting the Orton Gillingham training. And then at 6-8, again, we are more in a needs choice base or site based PD right now, as well as at the high school. And we're, again, looking at that to make change. But right now, we're also just started a new math program. So a lot of, the coaching support, and even though we do have coaching support in place, a lot of effort right now is going into our new math curriculum too. So we're trying to, you can only, again, do so much at once. So right now we're focusing on the sort of K-5 core curriculum and progress monitoring and screening and getting everybody on board at the elementary school. And then, 6th grade is piloting and are dipping their toes in. And we're going to be focusing on the higher, the upper grade levels in years to come. So our special educators, definitely are all on board with Orton Gillingham and, have all been trained. And admin and support staff receive sort of programmatic training as needed two times a year. Okay, so I think that is it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Definitely have a few questions. I personally was curious about your Tier 3 curriculum-based CBM progress monitoring. I don't believe it was on the slide. Maybe one slide before this. Yes.
I didn't, yeah, it wasn't specifically that. It's the embedded reading assessments that are in the program.
Okay.
They're included in the progress monitoring for reading assessments are embedded in the curriculum programs, okay. in both Amplify and Arts and Letters.
Oh, no, but for your Tier 3 curriculum.
Oh, I'm sorry, because we're looking at different for Tier 3.
Which I think
was in a different slide.
Was Orton Gillingham and maybe,
here we go.
Yes.
So the question was again?
Oh, what is Tier 3 using for progress monitoring? And if you could clarify which Orton Gillingham approach you all are using. Is it the IMSE or?
IMSE.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't, so we're using the Orton Gillingham IMSE, the RAS plus and vocabulary. What was the question? What Tier 3? I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I think you already answered it. It was just, okay. What are you using for progress monitoring at Tier 3 for the curriculum that you're using? And you just said it was IMSE, I think, is the clarification, and then for SIPs.
And it's actually an exciting time to be on campus because I feel like even everyone's overwhelmed because we're doing a lot and we're having to shift a lot and learn so much. But like, for example, 3rd grade is now, with everything going on, they're so excited. They're piloting a new sort of intervention block where they're trying to meet all the tier needs at the same time through different stations and utilizing specialists very creatively. So it's all, there's so much in the master scheduling, right? And how you schedule. And so it's so exciting to see them. So they like talk to the specialists. Can you come in? And this is the time we have. And so the teachers are working with groups. We have specialists working with groups. We have kids doing independent reading with some light, touches from adults. And it's been really, it's where, and then we're looking at data, and then people coming in excited at the Wednesday professional development. We're both, because the ILT is very involved in, the teacher leaders are very involved, and they each have their own pineapple is what they call it, and what they own. And so it's been wonderful to sort of, have that conduit for the data sharing. And have it, and have it really be sort of the teachers really driving a lot of the learning, teaching each other. They're even taking on training chunks themselves once they've been trained, sort of in that trainer of trainer model. So I would say it's lovely chaos, right? And iteration, but it is an exciting time. So thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm glad that's happening. That is very exciting. I think Lindsay had a question. If you can confirm that grade 4 is on a whole different curriculum.
Yes, and the reason why that is because we're in the second year of the pilot, and so where more teachers got the opportunity to do arts and letters. This year, that team wanted to try, the fourth grade team wanted the opportunity to try this. So since they decided to expand the piloting, to give more time for the teacher to decide which curriculum they wanted. That's why that looks like that. So last year, it's more of a 2-year cycle. So that's why it looks like that. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think there's a question that if you could clarify the piloting process. So it sounds like it's a 2-year process, and you're on year 2 this year, 25-26?
That's correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then decisions will be made at the end of this year.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we also got a new principal, the new elementary school principal starting this year. So, it was another reason to, because the other principal had started it. So it felt like we weren't quite ready.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's been great. It's been great.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
And thank you for presenting. I think we're good to move on to our final district, and we have Piedmont presenting with Ariel Dolowich.
Yes, thank you.
Everyone.
I know we're close to 8 p.m., so I'll try to be concise and then see if there's any questions. So good evening, Ariel Dolowich. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. You can see some of our third grade data here. I just want to provide some quantities. We're a small district. This is based on last year's total student population of 2,455 students at the third grade level. We tested 159 students. And so the reason I want to highlight that is that can have significant variance, just 2, 3, or 4 students, as I'm sure Emory knows, for example, is a small district. So in the 3 years, you can see that there's been some uneven results. We've had some strong progress. Overall, we have approximately 80% meeting or exceeding standard. That's a little of an uptick. We were at 79% the year prior. Just to, again, quantify the number of Asian American students tested were 28 students. In the 3 years, you can see small growth there. Our African American and Black students, the total number of students tested for CAS were 27 total. So clearly stagnant and not making significant progress. So we do have an achievement gap to close. Hispanic Latino, and you'll see that it declines more significantly at the 8th grade level on the next slide. But just to mention, that 66.7% is a total of 12 students. So we've identified the 2 students that decline significantly, and we do have a focal student approach. So there's a lot of work being done at the site level, and especially with our MTSS teams. And then very proud, students with disabilities. We continue to be one of the highest achieving unified districts with students with disabilities. But again, I think that number, 70.6%, That's a total of 17 students. So just to quantify that. And then finally, socioeconomic disadvantaged, all grades, that's a total of 63 students. So it matters. And at the same time, want to be very thoughtful and intentional around the student identification and the support plans we're putting in place. Next slide, please. So eighth grade, we see a little bit more of the disparities. For instance, with our Hispanic Latino, you can see that decline. That's based on a total of 22 students that were assessed last year. And you can see the total, approximately 79% score 3s and 4s, meet and exceed. And just to name a few other points that you can see here, our socioeconomically disadvantaged over the course of 3 years did decline. You can see the total students last year with 16 students. And then consistent, but not at as high achieving of a clip for students with disabilities, 41% at the eighth grade level. So we can see that the scores predictably, unfortunately, decline as the grades progress. Next slide. So we are in year 1 of a new English language arts curriculum implementation for Knowledge Base. We're also, like Berkeley Unified, implementing Fish Tank Learning. We went through a robust and fairly accelerated adoption process last year. We identified criteria and we piloted Benchmark Advance and Fish Tank Learning. As Director Albeck mentioned, we've implemented a train the trainers model. So we have 7 site leads across 3 elementary sites, and I'll talk about that momentarily, in addition to the 3 principals, all receiving additional professional development, and then leading, facilitating, and providing observation and feedback at the site level. Our foundation skills is from phonics to reading, and that was adopted in 2023. Recently, last year, we adopted spellography for word study at grades 4 and 5. So we have from phonics to reading, K3, and then spellography 4-5, and that's obviously in addition to Fish Tank Learning. And then we use Orton Gillingham as a tier 2 intervention and tier 3. 2 years ago, we went through California Reading and Literature Project with UC Berkeley as our structured literacy training. All TK5 staff have received that, and we continue to provide summer professional development for new teachers onboarding. So we're very proud of that all of our elementary staff have been trained with the California Reading and Literature Project, which focuses on science of reading, phonics and word recognition, science of spelling, fluency development, instructional routines, and intervention routines. We're in the beginning stages of the shift, so that has not extended to the secondary level, candidly. Although our district adopted curriculum is still units of study at the middle school level. Transparently, our 6th grade team uses that with fidelity, and our 7th and 8th grade team supplements that significantly with novels, as well as some of those supplementary materials, Newsela, for example. I think in addition to tier 2, we also have Membean, which was not listed, and then of course MindPlay, and we focus some professional development with our reading specialist on comprehension groups. So that's some information that I just wanted to share at the middle school level, but that is a next step. We prioritized elementary over the last 2 to 3 years. I believe it is the IMS E program mentioned in the chat, but I'd have to follow up in terms of which ones. Next slide. So Dibbles is our screener. It was originally K3, and we've extended it K5. We have used map growth with NWEA as a replacement for SRI. To be honest, it's been uneven response from our staff in terms of the results that it yields. We want to build internal assessments, agnostic assessments, and so we actually have formed an assessment team, and we will be vetting such platforms as STAR, which was mentioned, and looking to do that 3 times throughout the year in addition to internal benchmarks. When DIBELS is conducted, then we automatically send a letter home, and it's part of parent-teacher conferences, and that occurs 3 times a year. And then we do implement NWEA map growth. Last year it was two times. This year we have it scheduled for 3. And then that guides our pending intervention based on results. And as mentioned, from phonics to reading K3 and spellography, that's a typo, should say 4-5. So those are just kind of a quick version because I know we're after 8. We've also purchased Learning Ally as a tier 2 for audiobooks, provides all the books that Fish Tank offers. We're very proud of the year 1 implementation. We've been prioritizing, and I guess it's on the next slide, with professional development. We've been prioritizing monthly PD opportunities led by myself, principals, instructional leads that are our teachers. You're welcome to go to the next slide. We've done a DIBELS refresher. We've prioritized calibration of target tasks that Fish Tank provides, but we are interested in supplementing Fish Tank with a writing framework. Our staff feels like that is a need, especially when we talk about genre writing for our students at the elementary level, and really becoming proficient as writers. That's a need that we would like to lean into. We heavily lean on our reading specialist at the secondary level. And again, we're a fairly small district, so I think we're a little more agile to be able to bring a middle school and high school faculty together. And then our administration, we've received training not only from Fish Tank and CRLP separately, but we have an ongoing partnership with National Equity Project to really focus in on how we're supporting students and families, especially as we look at not meeting the needs of our significant subgroups that was detailed earlier in this presentation. So I will pause there and see if there's any follow-up questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate the thoroughness and the comprehensive plan that Piedmont has. Looks like wanting to know, how are you continuing the elementary level work into secondary?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have secondary members as a part of our assessment team, and candidly, that's a need for us to lean into. So we have site administrators and leads, department chairs at the secondary level that have been a part of what we call an academic achievement plan. And so that's detailed use of what little restricted funding we do receive to better support students, whether it's with pullout or it's with after school learning opportunities. For instance, we just started site level tutoring for a number of the students identified at our middle and high school, so specifically for secondary. But as I mentioned with our curriculum, that's a next step for us.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. It looks like a few people are hopping off, and if there's any additional questions for Piedmont, we're happy to take them. Otherwise, if not, I think we're ready to turn it over to Caroline, right?
Thank you so much, Dr. Futterman, for moderating. Thank you so much, Alameda, Albany, Berkeley, Piedmont, Emory, for your presentations and your thorough responses for all the questions. Really do appreciate the time and effort you put into sharing this really valuable information with us and our families. If you have corrections that you want to make to your presentations, please do so and send those back to us. We will post it on the CAC website along with a copy of this recording. That's the beauty of having this recorded, in that for folks who are not able to join us live, they'll be able to watch it later and get the benefit of all of that great information. If you have folks that you'd like folks to contact to the extent that there might be follow-up questions, please drop those names in the chat if it's not you. And I just want to extend my appreciation to you again. Really appreciate the time you took to put into this. And just one more plug for the CAC. If we have any members of the public left, if you have enjoyed this presentation and like what you've heard, the real work happens on our committees. You don't necessarily have to be a voting member to help us put on these really engaging events. So please do consider joining the CAC. This committee meets on the fourth Monday of every month at 6 p.m. is when our business meetings occur. So you're welcome to join us to get more information about the committee itself, as well as the subcommittees that are doing the work. You can visit us on the North Region SELPA website under CAC. And again, thank you all so much for joining us. I think there's a membership flyer that was dropped in the chat a while back. Let's scroll through and find that while we're chatting here. But again, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. I really hope you enjoyed these presentations. Thank you for your very thoughtful questions and responses. And thank you again, Dr. Futterman, for moderating. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you again so much. See you on March 23rd for our presentation on how to have better IEP meetings at 6:30 p.m.